Mandy, I'm so happy to be here with you. I'm very excited that you agreed to be here and you made the time and everything. And I already told the audience a little bit of what you do and everything, but I want to hear it from you. Like, what is it that you do and why do you like it?
What a good question. I feel like I have a different answer every single time that people ask what I do, just because what I do is so complex. What my professional title is and what my website says I do is I help people with their body image, and I help people understand their relationship to food and their relationship to body and their eating patterns. But what I believe that I do is I teach people how to feel. I think that we live in a world where we've been brought up not to feel our feelings and not to be curious about our feelings, and not to process our feelings in a healthy way. And so I think that has really translated into a society of people seeking outward validation and seeking outward things to either mask their feelings, to not feel their feelings, to make up for their feelings, or to try and shift and change their feelings. And so I really see what I do is getting underneath those behavioral patterns and getting to the core of the feelings and just showing people that it's okay, that there are no good or bad feelings, and that the way that we relate to our feelings and the way that we process our feelings changes everything in our life, everything in our outside world.
Yes, I agree with that. How did you come to do this? Like, what happened in your life that you were like, oh, this is the thing? Like, things can be different. Like, my body image is damaged, but I can heal it. Like, how did that happen?
Oh my gosh. Even just like a couple months ago, if you had asked me this question, I felt so like insecure about it because I don't have a story where it's like I had a near-death experience or some big magical aha moment. And I always felt a little bit insecure about that. Like, and I always was reluctant to share my story. But now what I realize is that my story is powerful because I feel like my story is so normal. Because everything that I struggled with. So let me back up and tell my story. So from the as young as I can remember, I never liked my body. I never had a good relationship with my body. I deflected that and that feeling of just not being good enough by being shy, by hiding. Like I was when I was in 4th grade, I was the girl in the playground that was like mediating everyone's arguments and like just like the Mother Goose peacemaker for the 1st and 2nd graders and just like taking care of everyone else. And that, I think that was sort of my way of deflecting that pain that I felt, that I didn't feel like I fit in with the other kids in my grade. I didn't feel good enough. I didn't feel like anyone would like me. And so I really turned that into service, and it started at that young age. And then as I got older, you know, middle school, high school, even into college, it just turned into extreme yo-yo dieting. It turned into perfectionism, just constantly striving to be the best. I had to be the president of the National Honor Society and have the best grades and the highest SAT score and all of that stuff. And it was just exhausting. And that whole time, even as I was achieving all of those outward things, it was never good enough because I was constantly beating myself up because my body wasn't how I wanted it to, and my relationships weren't what I wanted them to be. And I even got to a place, I was living in New York. I was between New York and Santo Domingo working in international nonprofits, like doing work of service, which is what I always wanted to do. And I just felt this emptiness. I just felt like there was something more. And I just remember just always having this hit of intuition, like just always feeling like I had this call that said, leap and the net will appear. but I didn't know what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
So what ended up happening was I was, trying all the diets, working out with the personal trainers, doing all the things, trying to manipulate my body. And I was on this new diet program, and I was having like very fast physical results with the program. And I actually felt better than I'd ever felt, not just with my weight and the way my body looked, but like I had a lot of energy and I felt really good. So I got excited and I started sharing this program because it was like a network marketing opportunity. And all of a sudden I realized, I was like, there's more for me out there. I was disillusioned with the nonprofit world. I didn't feel like I was actually making an impact there. And as I was sharing this and becoming like this health coach essentially for people, I was like, yeah, I can do this. Like, this is changing my life. I finally got the body that I want. Like, I can change other people's lives and help them get the bodies that they want. So I'm doing that for a while. And
You were,
I love,
you were actually at that place where you were like, this is it. Like, now I can finally be okay because I like it. I approve of my body.
Yes and no. So I had the body that I had been looking for. Yes. But what I was doing to maintain that body was not sustainable, and it was driving me mad. I just didn't realize it in the moment. So the thing I love about network marketing companies these days is that there's such an emphasis on personal development. And I got introduced to this world of personal growth and personal development and coaches, and I never even knew that existed before.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got hooked. I just loved it. I've always been like a spiritual person, but I just started opening new doors and new pathways that I never really known about before. Mm-hmm. So I hired my first life coach. And
how was that like? Like, how was, and I'm very interested about this because of course I'm telling the audience what is a life coach all the time and how it can boost your progress, right? But like, what was your thought process that made you be like, okay, I should look for this and this is something that could actually help me, without having done it in the past, without being like the normal to have a coach?
I feel like my story up to this point has been mostly like doing the right things for the wrong reasons. So when I hired my first life coach, it was because I was like, I need to up-level my business. I need to make more money. And so there must be something that I'm not seeing. So let me hire someone.
There was the network sales.
Yes, the network marketing. At that point, I had left my job. I think that I thought that I was going to get another 9-to-5 job. I just kind of wanted to do that network marketing thing and see if it would work. And I was challenged because I had been such a perfectionist and I had always excelled in work and school and things like that. And this was the first thing that I tried that I wasn't like instantly good at. And I think that I had this idea that, oh yeah, I can do anything. I'm a quick learner. Like, I know how to do stuff. And it wasn't like that. It required me to really expose myself and be super vulnerable and be open to failure. And those weren't things that I was open to doing. And so I went to the coach because I'm like, okay, there's something going on here. I was externalizing an internal issue, basically. And I just wanted the coach to be like, do this, this, and this, and you're going to see all the success that you want to see. But through the course of working with that coach, I just started peeling back so many different layers of things that I had never seen before. And I have been in a lot of therapy in my life. I've struggled with depression, anxiety, PTSD, so many things. I've gone to counselors, psychologists, cognitive behavioral therapists, hypnotherapists, like all different sorts of therapy. And nothing shifted the way that I think like coaching did. And I think it was because I always say that in coaching, we dip into the past to mine for information. So we just collect bits and pieces of information that show us why we're acting the way we're acting and what we're choosing to believe. But then the real focus on coaching is, okay, what are you going to do with that information and what do you want to create? And I had never really been exposed to any sort of work like that. I had always really gone through my past, combed through my past and gotten stuck in my stories, but I had never really shifted that into creation and been empowered enough to believe that I had the power to create something different in my life. And so that's why I like to tell my story now, because I thought that everything that I was doing was just normal. I thought that everyone felt like shit about their bodies. Like, I thought that everyone struggled really hard. I thought that it was normal to wake up and feel no energy and uninspired and unsure about what I wanted to do with my life. Like, I just thought all of that stuff was normal. I would bond with my friends over didn't like our stomach rolls and how much we dreaded jeans shopping and how many times we cried in the dressing rooms. And so I just thought it was normal. I didn't know that there was something different out there. And I certainly didn't believe that I was capable of something different because it was just in my DNA. I had just always struggled like that. I had always hated my body, and pretty much everyone I knew did too. So I think that that was the power of coaching for me, was recognizing that just because it was normal didn't mean that it had to be that way, and that I could access power within me to change my life and to witness that change in other people as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so what happened that in coaching, by questioning everything and seeing what you were going to do about it, you got to this body image topic? And how did you realize that you could get a new normal?
So originally I had hired the coach around business, and we never really talked about body image, honestly. And even after I decided to become a life coach and started my life coach training, I think it was then that I realized that I was sort of just digging through all of the things that I had struggled with in my life. And I mentioned a few of them, like anxiety has been huge for me, depression has been huge for me. And when I really combed through all of that stuff, all of the arrows were really pointing back to my self-confidence. And I really felt like the root of a lot of the things that I had struggled with in my life had to do with my self-confidence. And the fact that I held the belief that the way that I looked somehow was a signifier of how worthy I was. Like, I would literally just walk into a room, and if I felt fat that day, I would just assume that no one would want to talk to me or that no one would be interested in what I had to say. And so as I was doing all of this personal work, I was like, sort of like, okay, all the arrows are pointing back to this one thing, which I had shifted. It had shifted naturally, really, for me, because what happens is when we work on our beliefs, all of our behaviors and things just start to fall in line. And so I hadn't specifically been working on food, and I hadn't specifically been working on body image, but I had been working on a lot of my beliefs about my value and my worth as a person. And those things had just naturally shifted. And so when I thought back to it, I realized, I was like, okay, body image, food, that was the stuff that was the root of everything for me. And yeah, and I just knew that that was something that I see everywhere in so many different people in my life, and just in advertising and in media and in children growing up. And I just started thinking about how that had always held me back, like in my career and in my relationships and my friendships. And I was thinking about how much power and how much different this world would be if women weren't held back by that. And it just made me so excited. Like I'm even getting emotional thinking about it now, like how much more change we could create if we just believed in ourselves, and if we didn't have hangups about our bodies and the way that we look that were holding us back from really stepping into our power and our message.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Talk to us a little bit about this idea that we can create, you know, like this question that you mentioned in coaching, like, okay, you have this information, what do you want to create now? Like, because I feel that people usually get kind of lost there. Like, what do you mean with me creating what? Like, we can try to believe something else, try to be positive, try to be cheerful and grateful. Like, what do you mean that I can create something with the information I have?
Mm-hmm.
Because if somebody is empathizing with what you're saying, like, oh man, like this is hitting home. I don't really necessarily like my body. I am always trying to change it a little bit for the sake of being healthy, but really for this like super deep need to be who I think I need to be in front of others, right? And then, okay, I spot this. I have the same thing. I deal with this every day. I have the information. How can I create something out of knowing this?
Yeah. So I think what it points back to is our subconscious minds. Our subconscious minds are super rational. And so everything that we hear and everything that happens to us, our subconscious mind creates a story about it in order to explain it. Mm-hmm. And because our subconscious mind is constantly trying to keep us safe, it's constantly trying to keep us from feeling pain. So usually as children, we have experiences where, you know, someone teases us, or we witness our mom picking apart her body, or, you know, these little things happen. In order to be beautiful and feel loved, I have to look this certain way. And then we just carry that story forever and we accept it as truth, even though it's really just something that we created. So when we understand that everything that we believe is something that we created, that gives us the power to be able to create something new that feels better and that feels more empowering for us. Mm-hmm. So we have the opportunity then to take a look at these stories that we've created about our bodies and about the way that we show up in the world and say, okay, what do I want to believe? And I realized that what I wanted to believe about myself was that my body didn't have anything to do with who I was. That the way I looked didn't have anything to do with my message, with who I am as a friend, as a partner, as a daughter, as anything. And that my value doesn't lie in my body at all. And so the process that we then go through is like, okay, so I've decided what I want to believe. I've declared that. So now what I have to do in order to train my subconscious mind to actually believe that, I have to consciously go out and create evidence to support that belief. And so then I get to, it's almost like a game, right? I get to set up little scenarios that create proof that this new belief that I want to believe is true. And we literally can create proof of anything in this world. Like there's a scientific report to back any thesis basically that you want to back. So we have the power to go back, explore our beliefs, choose what we want to believe, create proof for that. And then through repetition and the collection of evidence, we train our subconscious minds to believe something new until it does become our new truth.
Can you give us an example of like the evidence that you were starting to collect when this journey started for you?
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that my first coach had me do, and that I have every single one of my clients do, is I would send, I think it was like 5 emails. I usually have them send 4 or 5 emails out to the closest people in your life. Just answering a couple of questions. Questions like, what can you always count on me for? And what do I bring when I walk into a room? And what do you see as my strengths and what I bring into the world? And when we receive responses back from the people who know us the best and the people who love us the most, typically what they say are things that describe who we are at a soul level. Like, no one ever responds and says, like, you bring great legs into a room. You know, your abs inspire me so much, right? Like, because when people respond to questions like that, they respond with what they truly think about us and what we mean to them. And so when we hear those words, then we're able to have an understanding of our soul identity, and we're able to separate who we are from what we look like. And so I think that's a really huge first piece of evidence to start with, is like, okay, what are the words that describe me as a person, as a soul? And because often we have a little bit of a blind spot there, it's good to start by asking other people who know us well. And then I'll typically challenge people to say, okay, what do I admire in other people? Because typically when we admire someone in someone else, it's because that thing is deep inside of us and it wants to come out, it wants to be expressed. Mm-hmm. And so if I admire someone who I see as super artistic and creative, but I've been telling myself a story that I'm not artistic or creative, it's because there's some creative part of me that wants to be expressed. So then I get to play with that and be like, okay, so how can I be creative in my day today? How can I bring that out? Oh, I love to color, or I love to sing, or whatever it is. And then every time that I do that activity, I'm creating more evidence to support the fact that I'm a creative, artistic person.
Yeah. Like you can actually acknowledge something that you do have that shows that. No?
Exactly.
I love it. It's super interesting. So, okay. Creating the evidence makes total sense to me. What happens? I feel like we haven't talked about something that is key and like a big giant in this conversation. That is our relationship to food. Like, it's our relationship to the body. And okay, great. I understand that there's value in me that doesn't have anything to do with my body. But yet I still have this need to shift my body. And then I get like faced with this situation, choosing what to eat and whether or not to restrict. What's up with that? Like, how do we deal with this need to control it using the food that we eat every single day?
So,
and also something important. What is it taking from us to worry about food every day?
Oh, this is such a multifaceted question and so charged in so many different ways. I think the first thing to look at is what's underneath my desire to control my food. Like, why do I want to control my food? Because I think what it usually boils down to is the fundamental issue of trust. Because we live in an age of information where we have access to so much science and so many quote unquote experts who are telling us what our body needs and what's the most healthy and what's the best thing for us. And it's so much easier for us to just listen to an expert because they have the science, they have the proof, collect their plan and apply it to our life than it is for us to actually dig deep, live inside our bodies, connect with our bodies, read our body's cues, and trust that what our body is saying is what it actually needs. Because there's, like I said, there's so much science to support so many different things, but the fact of the matter is that every single body is completely different. Like, there is no one size fits all nutrition plan for people because we're all not only built physically different, but emotions play a huge role in how we metabolize food, in the foods that we choose, our geographical locations. Like there's so many different factors that have to do with what we eat, how we eat, why we eat, that it's impossible to just be like, oh, well, Dr. Atkins said to do this, so I'm just going to do that and expect that we're going to have uniform results across the board.
Yeah.
So I think we need to get curious about, you know, what's behind that need to control and restrict, because usually it's pointing back to an issue with your body, something that you're picking apart that you don't like about your body that you want to change. And then it becomes, again, that body image thing where, okay, why do I want to change this? Why do I feel like I'm not good enough? Why can't I accept this? Because when we actually think about our motivations for implementing any sort of change in our life, they're coming from one of two places. They're either coming from fear or they're coming from love. So if we're motivated to try a different way of eating, for example, a fear-based motivation would be, I'm going to start this new program for eating because I don't like my body. I have too much fat around my stomach and I really want to change that. And we'll tell ourselves the stories of like, oh, this is because I'm unhealthy and because having that fat around my belly puts me at higher risk for heart disease or whatever. But that's just a fear-based motivation because we're afraid of having heart disease, or we're afraid of being unhealthy, or we're afraid of what people are going to think of us if we have too much fat around our belly. A love-based motivation would be, I'm going to change the way I eat because I really want to feel good. I really want to have more energy. I really want to be more vibrant. I really want to be able to wake up in the morning and be excited and be able to share with the world. And right now I'm just so tired. And so coming from that place of worthiness and like, I'm going to make some changes and do some experiments to see what's best for my body because I deserve to feel my best. Mm-hmm. That's a love-based motivation. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, no, it does. But yet again, like what happens when we have this mixture, you know, it's just all intertwined with like, in my head, I know that if I lose weight, I'm going to look better and maybe I find a boyfriend, or maybe the girl I like will look at me, or maybe all this fear-based stuff. But then, because we're smart like that without even knowing, we're like, yeah, this is so healthy and I love eating veggies and I love drinking water and I'm such a fitness person, you know? And then it's kind of like we play games with our own minds and then of course with everybody around us. We're never saying like, oh, I'm on a diet because I really struggle with feeling accepted or feeling sexy. We never say that because we're like, oh, I'm sexy, okay, but I'm doing this because I want to lose a couple kilos or whatever. Sometimes we do accept that we have some kilos we want to lose. But we like to pretend that we care about our health and that we're not on the verge of crying at night, you know, to like the people around us, because it's not cool to be that weak. So we fool ourselves and everybody around us with our reasons. And I feel, because I've been there, to the point that I'm even a little confused on whether I love myself so much or I'm so fucking afraid, you know? And then it's kind of like, which is it, you know? Like, how can we, and I know it's just a really ambiguous, humongous question, but how can we start identifying what we feel inside whenever we get in the mood to do something different? How can we start dissecting our reasons to kind of like separate and be able to have clarity on exactly where we are? Because I feel like if we have the clarity to know where we are, then we can be like, look, it'll be in my best interest to actually look for help because there's a lot of fear. I see that there's a lot of fear mixed with a little good intentions, you know? Or if I'm like, I feel like I can do this because there's a lot of love and there's a lot of work that I already done in like loving and accepting myself.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the audience is probably like, do I need this? Do I fix this? Can I do this on my own? Do I need to call you immediately? You know?
So is the question, how do I know what my motivation is? How do I know what my reasons are?
Yeah, especially when they're so mixed up, you know, like.
Yeah. So this is a good question because I think that there often is a mix of both. And I think what you said, it comes down to radical honesty with ourselves. There's something that my coach, Samantha Skelly, says, which is which is the thing that we most want is the thing that we're most afraid of. And so I think that sometimes it's really hard for us to be really honest with ourselves about where we are and what we actually want, because we have fear around what that's going to mean. Like, what am I going to have to do different? Like, am I going to have to fall apart? You know, we're afraid of the unknown. And so I think that's what sometimes blocks us from being super honest with ourselves about our motivations. But I think it comes back to just connecting in with the sensations that happen in your body. And so, like, how do I know, for example? Because I'm not perfect by any means. You know, I lived for 30 plus years hating my body. And I still have days that I don't feel great about my body. And so when I'm making a choice about what to eat, what I get to do is sometimes I'll just literally stand in front of the mirror and be like, what do I feel right now? What do I feel when I look at my stomach? What do I feel when I look at my thighs? And am I choosing this salad because of how I feel about my stomach? Or am I choosing this salad because I'm just really craving a salad? Right? And I think it really comes down to something that simple. Mm-hmm. Like, what am I really craving? And am I choosing from an emotional place? Or am I choosing from a physical place? Because our bodies will naturally tell us exactly what they need. Like, I will have days where all I want is like all the veggies and all the salad and all the green juice and all of that. And I'll have days where I'm just like, I just need pasta. You know, and I hate how we create like dogma and restrictions around our food. I think that really blocks us from understanding our bodies. I feel like there's been like a huge wave of vegetarianism and veganism, and I support that. You know, I support it from an environmental perspective, from a animal lover perspective. But at the same time, I think when we put these rules and restrictions around, like, this is what I do eat and this is what I don't eat, we cut off our intuition. Like, we cut off the access to trusting our bodies to tell us what we need to eat. So, and I'll go through phases. I went through a phase earlier this year when I was eating mostly vegan. And then just recently, I've just been craving a lot more meat and been eating a lot more meat just because I just felt like my body was wanting it. And it's been interesting to look at the difference in my energy, the difference in my strength, the difference in my mental clarity when I'm really following those cues.
Mm-hmm. That reminds me the quote, don't make permanent decisions on temporary feelings.
Yes.
When you choose a diet that is so specific, and then you just say that you're going to be like this forever. And
yeah,
it might be a long period, like years or something, but it's still temporary because you don't know what's going to happen next decade of your life, you know.
Totally. We're constantly evolving. And our egos love identities, and we create these identities for ourselves because they feel safe. Mm-hmm. They feel safe for us to try on. But when we take a step back and allow ourselves to be curious about life and to try different things on, like I play a little game and I'll explain it to my clients as like, try things on like they're an article of clothing. Right? Like I have a lot of curiosity about different things because I've had these identities my whole life that have told me that this is who I am. And so why don't I go out and try on being an artist? Like, let me just try that on and see how it fits, see how it looks, you know? And it gets to be a fun experiment for us to try on different things.
Into our lives where we usually want to be so serious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it also helps with the fear factor, no? When we're so like, oh, but what if I suck at it? Well, then you stop doing it. If you really don't like it, then you stop doing it. Or if you suck at it, but you like it, maybe you get better at it with practice or whatever.
Yeah. What you just said goes hand in hand. Like, we fear things because we take ourselves so seriously. We take everything so seriously. But if we just lighten up and treat things like an experiment, treat things like a game, and try and have more fun and more joy with everything, then there's less fear. Like, we think that every decision we make is some big earth-shattering decision, and it's not. Everything in this world is temporary. Absolutely everything. And so if we can just treat everything like an experiment, it takes so much pressure off.
Yeah. Mandy, I want you to tell us, how was it for you to find like your vocation? Like, throughout all this self-discovery and work and all this process, like, when was it that you were like, oh, like after working in New York and Santo Domingo and with this network company and then having a coach and doing my own work, when was it that you were like, man, I love how it feels doing this work, or I found what I want to do in life?
Mm-hmm.
How did that come to occur?
I always say that coaching found me. I didn't find coaching. And I really think that it was the product of me just doing this personal development work and learning to connect with my body and connect with my intuition again, and just following my intuition. I think the way that I found coaching was through just a random series of small steps, like acting from my intuition, that I had no idea where they were going to lead. Because definitely when I left my career 3.5 years ago, I assumed I was just going to get another job in the same field. But just every little intuitive nudge, like every little choice that I made, every little step that I took started leading me down a different path, and I had no idea what that was going to look like. And I just had to choose to trust my intuition and trust myself, trust God, trust the universe that it was leading me on the path that I was supposed to be on. I think the only thing that I've known to be true my entire life about what I wanted to dedicate my work and my career to is just service of other people. And I think that the paradigm that I lived in was, I believed that serving other people meant being in the nonprofit world. And I did that. I have a master's degree in nonprofit administration. I spent a lot of years working in international development, partnered with the United Nations on different projects. I lived in Santo Domingo in the field, working in public health, working in international education, in lots of different areas. And I loved that. But there was always, it almost always just felt like there was some incongruence. It was like every time, like even as I was doing my master's degree and they tell you, you need to niche down, you need to find your specialization, I was just feeling like so resistant to that. Like something just felt off. And I just was like, this isn't right. And I couldn't figure out why. And so I just had to let myself be led by those intuitive nudges. Like I just had to trust my intuition and trust where I was going. And honestly, I'll say, like, I'm a coach right now. I love coaching. I absolutely adore it. But I don't know what I'm going to be doing in 10 years, because I trust that I'm constantly growing and evolving, and that I'm just going to continue following what feels good, and that's going to be my right path.
I love that. Yeah, because you give yourself a lot of room to grow. It's like anything can happen, and it's okay if I don't know everything right now.
Yeah. One of my core beliefs is feeling good is the way, not the destination.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't pretend, I don't have the expectation that I'm going to wake up every day and feel amazing and be like so excited, right? That's just a dumb expectation because we're humans and we don't feel amazing all the time. But I think as a general rule, I feel really good as a coach, and I'm going to do this as long as it feels good. But when it stops feeling good, then that's my intuition speaking to me that there's something else out there for me, and I need to take a look at what that might be and do some more experiments.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Mandy, give us a little bit of like a helicopter view on what happens when somebody decides to take coaching to heal their relationship to self-image and the whole thing with diets and restrictions. Like if somebody's like, oh my gosh, I so need this, but they want to kind of like peek a little on like what's gonna happen, in this. Like, what am I going to go through? What am I going to be questioning?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's such a loaded question. I think the beauty of one-on-one coaching is that it depends on what you bring to the table, and it depends on how open you are. So each of my coaching series with each person is completely different, based on what their stories are and how they show up. But I think as a general overall view of the coaching process, what we do first is establish what your story is. And we sort of dig into, okay, what are the stories I've been telling myself? And then we establish what we want to create. Because I really believe that in order for us to move out of old patterns, we have to have some idea of where we're going. Otherwise, it just feels like a big black unknown. And that's the main point of coaching, is moving us forward to a new point, to a new life, to a new creation. And so we start there, like, this is the box with my old stories and the way that I've been being. And this is the box of what excites me, what I want to create. From there, I ask all of my clients, at least while we're working together, to suspend whatever their diet rules are, whatever programs they're following, all of that kind of stuff, and to just live in a state of trust for the process. And I ask them to adopt a mantra or a belief that everything is working out for them in perfect timing, and to just trust that for the time, at least, that we're working together. And then from there, whatever you bring to the table each week is what we dive into. But I would say the majority of the work is, like I was saying at the beginning, around our emotional landscape. Because I think that a lot of the choices that we make around food and a lot of our relationship with food has to do with how we're relating to our emotions. Mm-hmm. Because just as we label foods as good and bad, we label emotions as good and bad. And so just as we avoid bad foods, we avoid bad emotions as well. And just as sometimes we binge on bad foods, we binge on bad emotions as well. And it's really just a mirror.
I love that. I never understood that way, like binging on bad emotions sometimes after we've been restricting them.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible.
It happens because it's like we stuff them down, cover them up, not allowed to talk about them until they just sort of explode and they feel like they're consuming us. And I think there's a certain part of us that is a little bit addicted to that suffering, that thinks that we deserve it. And so we allow ourselves to identify with that emotion, and we allow it to become a part of who we are, rather than just observing it and seeing ourselves as containers for emotion.
I love it.
Yeah, so my coaching around food and body image is very mixed up in our emotions and how we relate to our emotions.
I don't think I ever heard it explained that well. Like the whole that what you just said. But I can't even repeat. I'm like, wow. Oh my gosh. So what if if we're not in restriction of bad emotions, because I feel like you hit a spot with the whole, we label emotions as bad, like sadness, frustration, boredom, anger, whatever, right? We label them as, we need to be positive, we need to be happy, we need to keep our frequency very high, we need to be at least okay, you know, with things, like, and never go lower than that. But what happens, like, when we're balancing it out, not restricting or binging, and just having whatever is at the moment or whatever, then how do we do it? How can we have a normal amount of boredom, sadness, anger in our daily days or daily lives, so that we never just binge on it and stay down for longer periods of time?
I think this is a good question. So I think what happens is we do what you just described is what I call pink washing, where we just want everything to be positive and beautiful and flowy, and like, I'm just not going to go there. But what happens is, if we don't access the full spectrum of emotions, like if we don't access all of the stuff we consider bad, we cannot access the highest, best of what we consider to be good. And so we have to just be in full allowance of everything, and just fully allow ourselves to feel the extent of what every emotion is. And when we create that space of allowance and acceptance, just allowing it all to be there, then what we get to do is slip into an observation mode. So instead of labeling an emotion and being like, I am sad, when we say am, that is a word that assumes identity. So instead of saying I am sad, which is basically saying I am a sad person, we're saying I'm experiencing sadness. And we get to create a little bit of a disconnect there from the emotion that we're experiencing and who we are as a person. When we're able to do that, we're able to then ask, okay, I'm experiencing sadness. What do I really need? Like, what is this sadness pointing to? And we're able to acknowledge the emotion, respond to it, and take action on it, process it in a way that it's asking to. Because I just see emotions as information. They're just pointing to something that's going on in our inner or outer world. All it is information. So if we just relate to it as information and we get curious about it and we're like, okay, what is this emotion telling me? What do I really need? And responding to that in an appropriate way, then we allow them to move through us. It's like, it's a little weird, but sometimes I describe it as like poop, right? Like, it's something that happens to all of us. It passes through. We have to just let it pass through, release it, and then it feels really good when you can just flush it down and say goodbye. But if we're not allowing it, then it causes lots of other problems. And we don't make meaning out of it, right? Like, we don't think that we are unworthy or we create labels or anything around who we are because it's happening. You know, it just is. We're just containers for it. It's something that's moving through our body. So emotions are that. We're just containers for the emotions. There's something that's moving through our body. And sometimes we have to be proactive about helping that process and helping those emotions move through the body.
That's incredible. I love it. So before you have to go, I want to shift gears a little bit, because on that note, and knowing everything you do, well, you coach somebody that is starting their journey into this self-discovery and empowerment and all that. What happens to you as a coach with your energy? And I want to talk about your self-care. How do you protect your energy? And especially as an intuitive person, very sensitive and all that, like how do you do it so that your energy is not totally drained after coaching people that are going through understanding, dealing with fears, understanding their emotions, telling it all to you, and then you being able to coach from a place that doesn't deplete you?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, my energy is my number one priority. I really believe that our energy is the greatest gift that we give to the world, and that we have to be responsible for our energy. And so the way that I set up my days, when I create my calendar, when I create my work schedule, I set it up to be able to engage in self-care and protecting my energy throughout the day. So there's a huge time block in the morning where I'm doing things just to get myself rolling and that feel really good and that fill up my cup before I even start my day. And then I schedule in blocks throughout my day of blank space where I can nourish myself, whether that's just like sitting in the sun with a book or just laying on the floor staring at the ceiling. Whatever it is that I need in that moment, I prioritize my energy, I prioritize my vibration, and I make sure that there's time in my day for that every single day, always. And it's non-negotiable for me. In terms of being in sessions, so I have like a little meditative practice that I do before I go into sessions where I essentially sort of get myself into alignment. I like to get into alignment with God, with spirit, and with the earth, and sort of channel those energies and close my energetic field to other energy frequencies. So I am a very empathetic person, but when I'm working with a client, I view that client as their highest self. And so whatever emotion that they're stuck in, whatever their story is, whatever they're going through, I don't view that as any sort of indication of who they are. All I see is their highest self and their possibility and what's waiting for them on the other side of it. And that really allows me to like see through what they're going through to the possibility. And that helps me so much, because if I allow myself to get stuck in their story, then I'm not helping them. My job is to keep seeing the vision of what's possible for them. And that's what I really try and do in every single session with my clients. And then, sometimes there will be heavy stuff or stuff that triggers something in me. And when that happens, I have different practices that I do. Meditation is huge for me. I practice meditation daily. I practice yoga almost daily. Yoga really helps me move emotionality through my body and recenter. I think movement in general, whenever I'm feeling a lot of emotionality or stuck in anything, walking around the block, or I have a hula hoop in my living room, just doing some hula hooping or jumping jacks or something like that, it helps just move things through. And those are probably the biggest ways that I protect my energy.
Awesome. Do you have a limit of coaching clients that you can have at a time?
I'm very strict about this. Because like I said, my energy is my greatest gift. And so I'm not going to overload my schedule with too many clients so that I can't give the best of myself to every single person. So yeah, I definitely have a limit. I never see more than 2 clients in a day. And that's very important to me, because I do a lot of work before and after each session that the client doesn't always know about. A lot of just energetic work, and I also provide like pretty detailed follow-up emails for each client I definitely make sure that's a part of my protecting my energy, is making sure I limit the number of clients that I see.
Okay. And so where can people find you?
Well, I hang out a lot on Instagram. My Instagram is at @Sciacchitano, and that name is wild, but it'll be shared in the show notes, I'm sure.
How do you say it again?
Sciacchitano. I'm Sicilian. There's not a lot.
I would always say macchiato. I know it's not. I just think you're like a coffee.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure that's like a coffee. No, Sciacchitano. So I'm on Instagram a lot. My website is mandysciacchitano.com. I've just gotten really into Instagram TV. I post a video every week on Instagram TV about like emotional eating, and I try and just crank out the value. I try and just give you as much free coaching as I possibly give. My mission is always to overserve, to overgive value, because I just really want to see a world with more people stepping into their power and more people understanding their own divinity and understanding that the stuff that we worry about just doesn't matter. Worrying about food, worrying about the way that our body looks, at the grand scheme of things, at the end of the day, it just doesn't matter. We're so much more powerful than that. And we have so much more to give to the world than that. And that is what motivates me every day. So yeah, Instagram, my website. I'm also doing a lot more on Pinterest. I just love Pinterest.
I'm gonna follow you. I don't think I do. And I've been trying to activate my business through it, like trying not to use it only to scroll like just pretty things. And it's a science. I'm like,
it's super fun.
Yeah.
I really enjoy Pinterest. That's been my latest experiment, actually.
I'm gonna follow you and see what you're doing there.
Cool, yeah. I'll follow you too.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm always just so excited at these opportunities to speak to more people and to learn from you too. Like, I've learned so much from you over just following you the past few months, and I'm just really lucky to have you in my life.